Greetings, my fellow Fright Fiends. It's your buddy Boogeyman Ben here for a new episode of Boogeyman Ben's Horror Zone, and this is a tag video. This is another tag by my friend Sean Erschen, and this is the Freddy Krueger tag. So, brought a little Freddy out here to keep me company while I did this one. So thank you, Sean, for tagging me, and I'm really looking forward to doing this video. I don't talk about the Nightmare on Elm Street films that much, so I thought it was kind of cool that I was asked to do a Freddy Krueger tag, because most of the time I'm always talking about Jason. But growing up, the Nightmare on Elm Street films were a huge part of my life, and for some reason as I've gotten older, those films and the Freddy Krueger character just aren't as big for me as Jason. But I still love Freddy. He's still in my top 10 of favorite horror movie characters. I have a lot of Freddy Krueger stuff here in the room, and I'm really excited to answer these questions from one of my favorite horror film franchises and one of the most influential horror characters of all time. So there's a total of 8 questions, and I'm going to run through them and give my honest opinion. Okay, question number 1 is, what is your favorite dream sequence? That's a tough one. I think my favorite dream sequence is always going to go back to the original Nightmare on Elm Street for some reason, and I think it's going to have to be Tina and Freddy's first encounter. I really love that entire scene. The way that Freddy is stretching his arms out in the alleyway. I really just, it's a creepy scene that starts it, because he's throwing rocks at Tina's window. She goes outside and he's in that alleyway. That whole scene I still think is fantastic and one of the most terrifying introductions to a horror character ever. Question number 2 is, what is your favorite film in the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise? My favorite film is going to have to be the original Nightmare on Elm Street. Really a close second is Dream Warriors, which I think is a lot of people's favorite or second favorite. But for some reason that original film is still just my favorite of all time. I love everybody in it. Heather Langenkamp, Amanda Wyss, John Saxon, Johnny Depp, Ronnie Blakely, of course, the amazing Robert Englund. Can't say enough great things about the film. Absolutely love it. Still, I think, one of the most terrifying horror films ever made. Question number 3 is, do you think Nightmare on Elm Street 2 should have followed the events of the first film more, or do you think it works as a standalone film? I actually really enjoyed Nightmare on Elm Street 2. I always have. I know it's known as the quote-unquote gay, the gayest horror film ever made. I've always enjoyed the film. I'm a big fan of Mark Patton. I think he's a great actor and did a great job in the film. I think it was refreshing to bring a different take to the horror film genre by having the main character be a guy instead of a woman. You know, Mark Patton has always gone on record saying he was the first male scream queen. But also you have Robert Russler, you have Clu Gulager, fantastic cast in it. I also really enjoy Kim Myers. She does a great job as Lisa in it. I really love the film. I always have. I know that there's some really over gay themes that are sort of floating throughout that film, but it never bothered me as a kid, and I think it's really interesting that that film was released during the 80s. It's amazing that that film got made the way that it did, and I enjoy it just as being a standalone film. There's some great visuals in that film, and I think Jack Shoulder did a great job directing it. I always love the opening scene with the bus in the desert. I think it's some of the most amazing visuals ever done. It has some terrific scenes in the film, and I really love it as just its own thing. It doesn't have to tie into the other films to be effective. Question number 4 is, what is your favorite kill in the franchise? Going back to the original Nightmare on Elm Street, it's going to have to be Glenn being sucked into his bed. really bothered me that he was killed the way that he was. It's such a brutal scene and just so effective, and I still think one of the most disturbing kills in any horror film. Question number 5 is Freddy vs. Jason better as a Friday the 13th film or a Nightmare on Elm Street film? The first time I watched the film, I thought it played heavily more as a Nightmare on Elm Street film. But I've always accepted it as a Friday the 13th film, that it's the 11th film in the Friday the 13th franchise. But I also put it as the 8th film in the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. Just because New Line was the house that Freddy built, and I know they acquired the rights to Jason, it didn't feel like a 100% authentic Friday the 13th film. So I think Freddy vs. Jason, although I can see it working as a chapter in either franchise, it does seem to favor heavily more towards Freddy, even though, of course, Jason technically wins at the end of the film. Question number 6 is, who is your favorite final girl in the franchise? It has to go to Heather Langenkamp as Nancy Thompson. Not only is she my favorite final girl in the franchise, she's one of my favorite final girls of any horror film of all time. I just think she's fantastic. She's intelligent, she's beautiful, she is just such a amazing character, and it's one of the most amazing performances that Heather did across the 3 films that she did in the franchise. I absolutely love the character, and I think Heather's a fantastic actress. Question number 7 is, what would you like to see in the next installment? So, of course, as everyone knows, since the remake, there really hasn't been any movement on a new Freddy Krueger movie. I did a video about this maybe 3 years ago, where there was rumors that they were trying to do they were going to do a new Nightmare on Elm Street film. My biggest thing for another Nightmare on Elm Street film, and I'm going to say the same thing I did 3 years ago, and some people gave me shit for it, and I don't care. This is what I honestly think. I think the biggest problem with the remake, well, not only that the story wasn't really that interesting, they borrowed a lot of elements from the original films. My biggest problem is that they didn't reinvent Freddy. I felt like the Friday the 13th reboot reinvented Jason a bit. They made him more of a survivalist. He wasn't a zombie anymore. He was actually a human like he was in the first 4 films of the original franchise. And they took elements, but they also made him this survivalist that could shoot bows and arrows, that had a tunnel system under Crystal Lake, so they added new elements to him, whereas in the remake for Nightmare on Elm Street, the only thing that they really added was sort of the idea that Freddy Krueger accused of abusing children, and that sort of played heavily into, was he guilty, was he innocent, and then they kind of copped out and said he was guilty. I thought it would have been more interesting if they had kept the angle that maybe he was innocent and it was just kids telling lies. That would have been kind of interesting to see, but they went the route of saying that he had done the crimes, but he looked just like, I love Jackie Earle Haley, but he looked just like Robert Englund. The costume everything was the same. They made the burns different, but they just didn't give him enough to do, and I feel like if they're going to redo it, they need to redo it. They need to make Freddy look different. He's still going to have the razor glove and everything like that, but I think they just need to change something about him. Either, change his color tones, do something different to him so that you're not automatically looking at somebody that's impersonating Robert Englund. And that's just what it came across as for me when I watched the remake. The final question is not really a question, it's just asking you to reenact your favorite line from the franchise. I really don't like doing that, so I'm going to let Freddy speak for himself. So that is it, my fellow fiends. Sean, I want to thank you again for tagging me in this video. I can't think of anybody else that I can tag. It seems like I've been tagging the same people. I know that my friend Phil over at Phil's Creepy Vids is a huge fan of the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, so I'm going to tag him. And anybody else that wants to continue this tag, I invite them to do so. I will put a link down to Sean's page down below. The guy's fantastic, puts out a lot of great content. Please support him. And thank you so much for supporting me here at Boogeyman Ben's Horror Zone. I really appreciate it. Please, if you guys like the content that I'm putting out, hit that subscribe button, hit the little bell icon so you guys are aware every time that I upload some new videos. Also, check me out on my social media links that are listed down below. Really appreciate it. And as always, thanks so much for watching, and I'll talk to you guys later. Take it easy. Stay scared as always. Peace.